Hello and welcome to another episode of Custody Central. Today we're going to do an example of deployment and how to do this intelligently in a way to set yourself to score the most secondaries you possibly can. Obviously caveat that with, don't do bad deployments to try and score secondaries, obviously try and win the game. But there are little things that you can do where it doesn't really affect your game plan, but doing it in a specific way just makes it ever so slightly better for you. We're going to go through an example of how you would deploy your army and some considerations about secondaries, which you might not be doing in all of your games, but I think you should start trying as soon as you can. So in this example, we've drawn Crucible of Battle. This is the one with the kind of diagonalish deployments. Our mission rule is Chilling Reign, so nothing special there. And our primary mission is Vital Ground. So there's no middle objective. You score 2 for holding your own objective in your deployment zone. You score 5 per objective in no man's land, and you get 6 for your opponent's in your opponent's deployment, right? Let's have a look. So this is what the map looks like. You've got your home, you've got your 2 in the middle, the 1 in the middle has been removed, and they've got the 1 in the back end. So let's just say this is an example army. This is what I'm playing these days in case people are curious. So we've just got 2 bricks of Wardens, we've got Trajan, we've got a shield captain with Zeus's Hunter, we've got a brick of 9 guard with a Vex wood shield and 2 sword and shield, and a blade champion with Exemplar. We've got 5 Alarus, a Vindicator assassin, a Khalid assassin, and 2 Exaction squads, right? So let's actually do some things on deployment, right? Let's say, for example, in this case, I plan to deep strike this unit. This is my rapid ingress unit because it's got a very large threat range. You don't necessarily have to do this. This is just how I would do it. You could decide to put in a Warden squad, or you could rapid ingress your Alara squad, whatever. But let's just say, for example, we do it like this, and we strategically reserve an Exaction squad. Now, this is the rest of your army that's going into deployment. You're going to have 6 drops. Now with drops, this matters more, right? So you have to decide how many drops does your opponent have, how many drops do you have, and is there any useful way that you can deny information, right? If your opponent has less drops than you, which is pretty unlikely, but it could happen. If your opponent has less drops than you want to try and deny the most information you can about your intended deployment. And why is that? And that is because they could make what I would call a deployment mistake if they show their hand on where they plan to deploy before you're supposed to know where they are, right? So this actually happens more often from your opponent's side, where they've got like 12, 13 drops versus your 5 or 6, and they start dropping their big pieces first, right? And why does this matter? Like if they don't have a redeploy. Why does this matter? If they drop their big pieces first, this lets you know what their game plan is, and you could potentially react to it in a way that's disadvantageous to them. Right, so in the same way, on the flip side, you want to do it in a way where you show as little information about your intended deployment as possible. Now, when both players are pretty highly skilled, you have a good idea of where all the stuff is going anyway, so it kind of doesn't matter. But this is just little bits of advantage that you can get by denying information to your opponent from a timing perspective. So when you have this kind of army, you'll notice we've got 2 infiltrating units. So the first thing you should be looking at in terms of your opponent list is, do they have any infiltrate and do they have any scout? Scout is relevant because this puts your infiltrators at risk in no man's land if you put them, in the middle of the board. Let's say even if you put a guy here, for example, right? With a scout move, you could be in danger, right? It's more relevant with your Calidus, really, because she's much more valuable than your Vindicator. So even somewhere like here or here would be dangerous if they had, a scout move. If they had advance and charge with a scout move, anything like that. Or if they have their own infiltrators, you might decide that actually, remember, if you put an infiltrating unit down, they can't put an infiltrating unit or make a scout move with a 9. So you have to think, okay, is this an opponent, a mission, a board where I need to think about placing my infiltrate unit first to block them blocking me? Does that make sense? So let's say none of that matters, and if that's the case, they have no scout, they have no infiltrate. These units should actually go last, right? And the reason is you can place these guys with perfect information, so you can put them in the most, you can make them completely safe if you want. So assuming they have no infiltrate, they have no scout, you can ignore these guys, right? So you're left with these 4 units. Of these 4 units, I think the clear choice is you should do your Exaction squad first. Why do you do your Exaction squad first? Because these guys don't matter, right? They should have an idea of where these 3 units are going to go, but this gives them the least information. So you might think, okay, their job is to hold the backfield, right? Now, could they get shot from here? Right. you might decide to do something like this. Right? From the enemy perspective, you know, even if they move, they can't be shot, right? So they're safe. They're on the objective, so they're scoring you for turn 2. This is all good. Why is this actually not good? And we'll pause the video. Well, I won't pause the video, but you can have like 10 seconds to have a think about why this is not an ideal place for it. And it's not necessarily, and the answer is not because it takes up some deployment space that you could use for the rest of your units, right? Because you remember your objectives are here and here. You want to be very close, so you could put some stuff here if you really wanted, but probably, you know, you're gonna have to bite the bullet and think, you know, how do I get onto these objectives first? Why is it bad for them to start on the objective? And the answer is secondaries. Now, secondaries are random, but you know what the pool of secondaries are. So let's go have a look at where our secondaries are. Let's have a chat through this, actually. So when we do our objectives, right? Cleanse, tempting target, extend battle line, secure no man's land. These are like the best secondaries you can draw turn 1 if you go first, right? Because you can typically do them depending on the map, but you can typically do them and score max points, right? Defend, stronghold, storm, hostile objective. They're not, you know, they're recycled turn 1 anyway, so that doesn't matter. No prisoners, assassination, bring it down. You have no agency on this, and probably if you're going first, they shouldn't really present you any targets, right? If you're going second, you can get some of these. You know, if they put something in the middle and you get to kill it, blah blah blah. You can't really control that. But the reason why it's bad to start these exaction squads on the point, even though they're out of line of sight, is the existence of overwhelming force. So as a reminder, this isn't for you, this is for your opponent, right? So when this secondary is active, each time an enemy unit that's started within range of an objective marker is destroyed, you score VP. Right? So if for whatever reason your opponent happens to have indirect, and they kill this unit, they're getting VP. There was no reason to give this to them. If you wanted to deploy them in this area, right, you could have just set them up here. So they can always touch the objective in their turn 1, but if you don't go first, even if they kill this, they didn't kill you off an objective. So you deny them the ability to score, what was it called? Overwhelming force. So this is better. But what's actually better way? What's actually better than this, right? So let's look through the other objectives that exist. What's that? Can't do that. And you can see, where are we? Investigate signals exists as well. This is a card that you could draw in your turn 1. So, in your shooting phase, you can select one or more units that aren't battle shots, blah blah blah, and you go to each corner of the battlefield, and you score 2 VP for this. This isn't a lot. Sometimes you will, you'll just discard this because it's too awkward. But if you set yourself up in a way that you can have the choice, you might be able to do it and choose to discard it anyway for CP, whatever. But what we're really talking about is maximizing your utility in terms of setting yourself up for success in terms of the random secondaries that you draw. Why is this better? What would be an alternative way to deploy, right? And that is this. So here, we're not on the point. Do that to be a little bit more clear. If we draw investigate signals, we could do this if we want to, right? And remember, if you don't have to, but if you wanted to, you could do this. Or if you just wanted to score it, you could still go onto the point, right? And do that. So this is infinitely better than this, because here you couldn't get fully in unless you rolled like a 10, unless you rolled a 4 in your advance, right? If you wanted to do that. So this is why this is better than this, and is better than this, right? And this. And these are all worse because this doesn't give you the flexibility to get in here guaranteed. You could roll an advance to do it, but you might roll low on your advance. Now you don't have the option. So this is tiny little things with this exaction point. And you might think, oh, actually, I wanna just hold this anyway because this scores your home field scores VP. So that could be fine. But even then, you don't want to be on the point to deny them, I think, overwhelming force, where they kill you off an objective, in case they have any indirects or they have some fast units or whatever. If they don't have any fast units, don't have any indirects, yeah, I suppose it doesn't matter. Okay, so what else should we do? You're going to set up your units in the normal way, blah, 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 whatever. Keep in mind there's no objective in the middle, right? So, I mean, I'm just going to do this very rough here for a general idea. You would do this a bit more carefully in real life in terms of where you want your setup units to be. Yes, you're going to give up some lines of fire here, like, that's okay. You have to be close to this objective. Like, it's not really optional, right? Let's say we do something like this here as well. And now we've got our Calidus, and let's say we're going to play super scared with our Calidus, and we put her here, for example. And let's see, with our Alaris, we could start on the board here, right? And then we play these with no windows on the ground floor. So let's say your Vindicare Assassin, let's say they're going to start on the boards. Should they go here, for example? I mean, this could be an option. So you could score Investigate Signals if you want, you could pop out here and you could shoot here if you want. Or you could do like, what could they get, 7? So they could get this angle here if you want, right? But what would be a better place for the Vindicare, right? Then Investigate Signals. And here we go back to our list of secondaries that we can get, and a big one that scores a lot of points is actually Area Denial. So let's bring this up on the board. End of your turn, one or more from your units, wholly within 6 of the center of the battlefield. Obviously, if you're going to go first, they're very, very, very unlikely to have stuff in the center of, wholly within 6 of the center of the battlefield, right? This is worth 5 VP. This is big. If you can only get them wholly within 6 and not within 3, correct. You still get 3 VP. So let's look up Area Denial. On the side of the board. This is showing you the Area Denial bubble. Probably what you should do is you should set this guy up so he can always get within 7. Well, he moves 7, so he can always get Area Denial if you want to. The reason is there's no objective on this particular mission, so typically you would have like a unit of dudes, moving up to get this for you, but in this particular case you don't. So you should think very much about whether you want your Vindicare to be able to do this. And obviously this is dependent on whether you can get this Vindicare safe. And again, you've got the trade-offs of if they do decide to YOLO something super fast, you can get some free movement with moving and charges, etc. if you wanted to do this. So you should always be thinking about Area Denial turn 1, because this is a lot of points. And if you happen to just not be able to score Area Denial when you go first, it's like, you might think it's unlucky, but it's like, it's actually just a big miss from you in terms of your deployment, or might be army construction, right? So this is why I say, even like a cheap unit, if you started Exactions on the board, this would be a good unit to try and do it with an advance. Just happen to go first, or if you had Witch Seekers or what have you, Prosecutors, what have you. What else is there? So we're planning for this. Right, now let's have a look at Engage. Engage, again, it depends. Do you have enough drops available to do this? Let's get rid of Investigate Signals and Area Denial, and let's show Engage. Right, if you had the drops to do this, you should be thinking, is this something that I can score with my list versus their list on this mission without necessarily doing like a suboptimal deployment? Like, you don't want to bend over backwards to set yourself up to engage, but if you can do everything that you want to do, and this costs you very minimal extra in terms of deployment, you should be trying to be able to set yourself up to score engage on all fronts if you can, right? So here you get 3 points in tactical if you get 3/4 of the table, right? So here we've set up the quarters of the table. Like, you're going to be in this one, you're going to be in this one, in this quarter after your turn 1. The main one is this, right? So the question is, can you get a unit fully into this quarter by deploying here? And if the answer might be yes, the answer might be no, right? So here we can, if we rolled, looks like if we rolled a 4 on our advanced roll, for example, right? So this is why we deployed like this, because this makes it more likely that we can score engage if we happen to draw a turn 1, right? Because remember, we could have started more over here, for example, but this is just better in terms of engage and also for blocking lines of sight. So these are the little things that you think you can't control, but you can set yourself up for success. Now, beyond this, capture enemy outpost, I suppose, is also one of them. We've done this, we've done this. Now, beyond this, we've got capture enemy outpost, which is usually super difficult. Deploy teleport homers. Why is this good? This links very well with area denial, right? Because here you have to be in the center of the battlefield for area denial. And if you go first, they can't really do anything about it unless they've got scout moves or infiltrate. Deploy teleport homers. You can also do this in the center of the battlefield. Because with area denial, you don't have to do an action. You just have to be there, and your condition is there's none of their stuff there. Deploy teleport homer is an action, but again, it's in the middle. So why is this amazing? Right, this is also a very good draw, turn 1. In addition to these, cleanse, tempting target, extend battle line, secure no man's land. Because, again, if you have somebody like an assassin, where did my assassin go? If you have somebody like an assassin, like your area denial bubble is effectively your homers bubble in the middle, right? So this would be very good. You just go in there, you score area denial, and you get homers, right? And you do all that because you set yourself up in a way to have a unit that can actually do that, right? If this guy had been here, nobody's doing area denial, right? Nobody's doing homers in the middle anyway. That's bad. So when we talk about deployment, look at your list, look at the possible secondary draws that you could do, and think which are the ones that you could do without bending over backwards, etc. So let's also have a look at, actually let's keep looking at these 3 together. So capture enemy outpost, deploy teleport homer, and behind enemy lines. And the thing that you should be thinking is these are very, very hard to do turn 1. Now, some of you will have terminators in your list, right? And remember, if you go second, you can pick them up at the end of their turn using Golden Light, and then effectively deep strike turn 1, bypassing the usual deep strike turn 1 kind of restriction. Now, if your opponent doesn't have a list that can properly screen their backfield, or they might just not think about screening, they might think this might not even be on their radar, right? If you happen to have a list that has like 2 or 3 Alaris, right? Some lists do, some lists don't. I wouldn't personally YOLO like 5 Alaris into your opponent's part of the board. Like, you could do it, but I think generally you wouldn't. But if you had a unit of 2 or 3, you should be, and your opponent can't screen, you should actually be thinking about starting a unit of 2 on the board to take advantage of this, of these 3, right? And the reason is, if you go second and they can't screen, you can score behind enemy lines with Alaris. You just Golden Light them in. So now suddenly you're scoring VP instead of, not scoring any secondaries turn 1. And we've talked about why scoring secondaries turn 1 is actually pretty important. So you just got to get wholly within their deployment zone, and you just score, like, 1 unit would score you 3 VP. That's actually pretty good. Plus, they don't have to do anything there, right? So you can also shoot some stuff. You could charge some stuff. You could just be a headache for them, right? They might have to turn around to deal with this. They might have to, move to get angles, blah, blah, blah. So this is something to think about. Deploy teleport homers. If you do this in their deployment zone, you're actually now getting 5 VP. Which is really big. So if they can screen, you don't have to think about this. You could start them on the board so they can Golden Light anyway, but you're not thinking about necessarily doing it for teleport homers. But particularly if your opponent can't screen, they just don't start a lot of stuff on the board or whatever, you should be thinking about, do I want to leave myself an out to be able to Golden Light if I go second for teleport homer? And also, capture enemy outpost. Now, usually this is a dead draw. If you control your deployment zone objective, you score 8 VP. This is very big, and typically you can't be done turn 1. But an opponent might make a mistake, right? They might try and hold, or they might not even try and hold things on their objective with a very small unit, right? And if they do it with a very small unit, you might be able to get a 9-inch charge. So imagine you draw this and you draw behind enemy lines, right? Oops. What's it doing? Okay. So these guys just go on light. You're already behind enemy lines, and you just try a 9-inch charge. And if they don't have a lot of AC, or they've just got trash on it, so you can murder a trash if you make the objective, you just score all of this. This is 3 plus 8. It's 11 points turn 1. Now, is it likely that you're going to get exactly this when you have a list that has exactly, 2 Alaris Terminators that can slot on the board versus a list that can't really screen you properly? The answer is no, it's not likely. But these are all little things that you should be thinking about when deploying and picking which units are going to start on the board and which units are going to start in reserve. So anyway, hopefully it's just a little bit of more thinking about playing to your outs. And even though the tacticals are random, you should always be thinking about how do I set myself up in a way to take advantage of good luck where at all possible. So here are the takeaways for the people that like to skip to the end just to see the TLDR version. So secondaries are random, but you know what they are. There aren't that many of them, so you can kind of plan in your head how things are going to go. So we talked through on TTS on how to set yourself up in a position to score better if you get the right draws. Basically give yourself flexibility to score higher. The generic ones are for area denial in the middle, teleport homers in the middle or in the backfield, engage for the corners, and investigate signals in the far corners. If you have Alaris, you have small units of Alaris, and your opponent doesn't look like they can screen properly, remember you can go on light if you go second. Maybe give your opponent a heads up about it, because it's not common that things can effectively deep strike turn 1. So you can think about doing homers behind enemy lines and enemy outpost. So you can think about starting them on the board instead of having your Alaris in deep strike if you've got small units. And just a reminder that your best draws really turn 1 are stuff like tempting target, extend battle line, secure no man's land, and cleanse. And this is kind of why I very much promote people having things that infiltrate, scout, or rerolling advances like blade champions in the list, so you can score these reliably. One thing that we didn't cover, because it's not really part of deployment, is if you end up in turn 3 and you happen to have 2 Exaction squads still in strategic reserve for whatever reason, and you don't know where to put them, strongly consider putting them in corners, so you can get signals and or engage with them, and particularly try and put them in your opponent's corners if they can, or they don't necessarily have to be exactly in the corners, but in a place where with an advanced roll of 1 they could all fit into the corner if they could, etc. So you can set yourself up for homers behind enemy lines, engage and investigate signals. Alternatively, you might just want to screen out or do an action if you can manage to touch an objective coming in from 6 inches from the board edge. Also, lastly, thank you so much everybody for the support. If you made it to the end of the video, you're about like the 20-30% of people who get all the way to the end instead of just flicking off to a different video. So we've made YouTube partnership, so thank you very much for that, for making that possible. You'll see also we've got a join button. This will basically allow you to give me free money. You won't get anything for this. There are no secret videos. There are no additional access things that you get. Blah blah blah. I read all your comments anyway. I'm fairly reachable on the Canhammer Discord. I'll send a link to that in the description as well. But if you just feel like you have too much money and you want to give me something extra just because you like the videos, whatever, you can you can just join up for the various monthly plans or subscriptions that you can get. You get some badges. I'll have to work on getting some emojis for these later, but I have to probably commission somebody to create them for copyright reasons. And also, I've set up a Patreon as requested by some of you kindly in comments for previous videos, so I've set that up as well if you want to do that, and I'll put a link in the description below. Thank you very much for my first joiner who has kind of given me the idea that people actually pay for content that I'll put out. That felt really nice. I'm not going to name you, although you know who you are, just for, I think it's like data something reasons, but thank you very much. Thank you very much for that, and hopefully we'll see you guys next time, and we'll try and keep the videos coming. If you have any specific video ideas that you would like, obviously, put that in the comments. And obviously I'll read all of them. All right, thank you very much.